Hi, this is The Advisor with Stacey Chillemi, the founder of the Complete Herbal Guide. And today I'm very excited because Natalie's here again with me. Natalie Boehm is the founder of Defeating Epilepsy organization. And today we're going to talk about a topic that we feel is very important to discuss. It's about depression and epilepsy, a new way of handling it and a new perspective on it. And so epilepsy is something that is very hard to deal with. And even myself, when things were going really well, I would find that I was on top of the world, that my seizures were doing good. And sometimes, if I didn't have seizures for a while, this might sound silly, but even though I knew I had epilepsy, I kind of forgot because life was going so well. And then all of a sudden, my seizures would come back. And then all of a sudden I'd get very sad. I'd get very depressed. And it's like a reminder that it's not going away. And, I feel like, a lot of people, battle with depression who have epilepsy. But the thing is how do you cope with depression? How do you get out of the depression so it doesn't take control over your life? Because once depression gets control of you, you go downhill from there. And then, some people have even committed suicide because they were in depression about it. They didn't know how to handle it and they gave up on life. And that's something we don't want to see. We want to try to help the community, Natalie and I, avoid being in depression. And if you feel yourself getting depressed, we want to teach you different ways and a different way of handling it, a different perspective of dealing with it so you can get yourself out of depression and you could live a healthy, happy, and productive life and not let epilepsy get the best of you. So why don't you tell people about what you feel depression, how it's taken a toll on your life, because you've had it a long time, just like me.
Oh, yeah. I started having symptoms of depression when I was 12. And probably some of the darkest times I had battling depression was in my teenage years, mostly because at that time my seizures weren't controlled. And I saw my friends doing things such as getting their first car, being able to travel on school trips, things like that. And it just wasn't part of my life. And I just couldn't understand why I couldn't get these things under control. And where I feel sorry for my parents when it came to this is my neurologist at the time never recommended seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist. There was no mention of medication or was there something I could do to have coping skills. And I did in my teenage years attempt suicide twice. And I'm so glad, obviously, that, it didn't work and then I'm here. But I understand and empathize with people who are battling depression now because if you don't take care of it right at the beginning, you really can go downhill and downhill quickly
Oh
if it's
yeah.
something really bad. And I have found that, I take a low dose of Zoloft to help with my depression and it's helped. But medicine has just been one piece of the puzzle. Probably the thing that has really saved my life and saved me from having being down that dark path again has been exercise such as lifting weights and yoga, eating well. And one thing that a therapist I had in the past taught me, which has been still a very key playing part of my treatment, I have what's called a survivor list. And so let's say I'm having bad depression. I have first that I'll do something I like, such as going in my garden or going out to exercise for 20 minutes. If that doesn't work, call a friend. If that doesn't work, do something like be with my husband, something that brings me comfort. And only then, if I get down the whole list and nothing is going on, that's when I'm to seek help. And they recently out this year put the number 988 out instead of the long, suicide hotline that they had for the National Suicide Office. And I think this 988 is the best thing that, we could have done because there
Yeah.
are so many people who truly need help, but they're so afraid to say, I need help because of the stigma. We're
Yeah.
already dealing with the stigma having epilepsy. Now we're adding another stigma of anxiety, depression, mental illness. And as humans battling neurological disorder, we can only take so much. And that's really why I feel so many people are afraid to take their first step to acknowledge something's not right. And I can just say from my own experience and to anyone here in this community, you shouldn't feel shame for asking for help. It's
No.
okay not to be okay. And the
Yes.
reason for that is we're human and we
Yeah.
can't, we can only take on so much. And when things aren't going right, it's okay to say, take a step back and say, I need help. Something just isn't right, but I need to make it better for myself.
I hear that 100%, and I agree with you. I had struggled. My seizures were like a roller coaster, and especially when I got to the age where I could drive. I was driving for a little while, and then my seizures came back, and my doctor said, "Please stop driving. We need to get your seizures under control until you could drive again." So I didn't drive for over 15 years until
Oh,
they were able
wow.
to control my seizures and find the right cocktail of medications. And I also use holistic living, eating properly, getting enough of sleep, changing my whole lifestyle. And the combo of the both helped me control my seizures. But while I wasn't driving, something so simple like driving made me feel so depressed. I felt like I was in prison in my own home, and I could feel the depression.
Oh, yeah.
And after a while, sometimes you're just like, I can't drive. I can't do this. Some people I've talked to, they're like, I can't drive. I can't hold a job. And what is there to live for? And that's a mentality that you hear a lot, and, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
for me, I think what saved me was helping me get out of depression was the power of positive thinking. I stopped focusing on the negative and I started to look at the positive things, because there was a point where I was getting very depressed and I felt like I had sunk into my own grave and I didn't know how to get out of it. And the first thing I had to do was you know, before I started to resort to the power of positive thinking, what I did is I started to talk to people and I started to talk to professionals and just getting the emotions out, just talking about how I felt, getting all those repressed emotions out made me feel so much better. Because sometimes when we're dealing with epilepsy and we're suffering from, other diseases and disorders like depression or anxiety or anger, from the epilepsy, we tend to feel so overwhelmed and we're so embarrassed to tell people. One, you don't want people to think of you differently. Two, you feel like it's a weakness, like if I
Oh,
talk to somebody,
absolutely.
that I'm weak, that I can't deal with this on my own, because that's the generation we came from. And the generation before us, our parents were taught to not talk, and they taught us not to talk. You need to be strong, but we're humans, like you said. And talking to somebody, getting your repressed emotions out, and then figuring out tools and strategies to deal with those emotions you're feeling helps a lot. I feel like,
Oh, it does.
when I started to talk about my emotions, it was like I started crying and bawling because I didn't even know it for the long time how I was feeling. I became so numb as a person because I had so many emotions repressed inside, and I was always taught not to share them. And once I was able to like relate and be able to feel what I was feeling, it was like a bird just flew out of me and took all those repressed emotions and all that negativity out of me. And I started to focus not on the negative things anymore, not on the epilepsy, but focus on the good things in life and have gratitude. I have a family, I have this, I have that. And to just focus on the positiveness. And even though I couldn't drive, well, what can I do? I was very
Yeah.
good at communicating and I was very good at writing. So I used my strengths and I was able to make myself a lifestyle that was beneficial for me. And I feel people need to really focus, try to talk to somebody. And if somebody's not understanding them, look for somebody that can look and give you an unbiased, way of looking at things and that can relate to you.
I agree, absolutely. It's really, really important. And one thing I really like, as I've been, running my foundation, doing research more about epilepsy, I came across earlier this year. I have to check the year on it. They have something called positive psychology, and actually a professor and not too far from where I live at the Claremont Institute, was one of the co-founders of this form of psychology. And what I really loved about it is they talked about the history of psychology and mental health, and they said we labeled it as something so bad. Every time you read into it, it's you have this problem, you have this problem, there's all these problems. And it's like, why can't we have a branch of mental health where we say, you know what, we deserve to be happy, we
Yes.
deserve to be healthy. What
Yes.
can we do to dig into and find these tools to create happiness for one another? And it
Right.
was so nice to see a professional, a researcher go, I know about all these things that can cause darkness, but what can we do to alleviate the darkness? And
Exactly.
I think it's so important for people to be able to find what makes them happy, and
Yes.
don't feel any shame if you're having a bad day. Find something. I think one of the best things I did recently was here in the area, one of the community centers, they have support group nights on all sorts of different topics. It's only for an hour, but going on Zoom and talking for an hour to other people, it's really alleviated a lot of my
Yes.
anxiety. And also, it's nice to see others because I mean, I work from home. I have
Right.
2 kids. So I'm in that routine where it's kids and work, kids and
Yeah.
work and other
Hmm.
responsibilities. And after a while, even though you're not alone, you know, I have a wonderful husband and my kids, and I know I'm loved. There's times you go, gosh, I feel so alone. I'd like to be around other adults sometimes.
Yeah.
And it really helps to be able to have a few people just to talk to, even if it's just once a week going on there. So I encourage people, if you can find support groups, if you have a community center in your area,
Yeah.
or if you go online, if there's any type, I know different branches of the Epilepsy Foundation have
Hmm.
support groups. They will have teen nights or adult
Yes.
nights. I mean, don't be afraid to go on and say hi. And if
Yeah.
you find that group, okay, it doesn't work for me. I mean, now with the power of social media and everything, you don't have to say, well, my area location, I didn't feel comfortable. Oh, I can't see anybody. Follow these branches on social
Yeah.
media. Find a group that you're happy with. And if you find a group you're happy with, make an effort to go and do it for you. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks. Do it for you, because I found one of the most painful things when it came to epilepsy and depression is the isolation. Like you
Yeah.
said, when you couldn't drive, you feel like a prisoner in your house. And my
Yeah.
family didn't get that. I was in an auto accident years ago. A doctor of mine put me on a medication and it triggered me to have a seizure without warning, and I crashed my car. I
Wow.
couldn't drive for a year and a half. It was really bad. But I can't tell you, I went out at times just to sit in my car. And every once in a while I'd start the car so the gas that was in the tank wouldn't get all watery, ruin
Yeah.
my car. And one day my mother came running out. She thought I was going to hop in the car and take off. And I'm like, I'm not driving anywhere. I know better than to do that. And she's like, well, why are you in the car? And I said, Ma, I gotta just sit here. Let me listen to a couple songs and remind myself I can get past this. That one day
Right.
I will be able to get in my car and back it out
Yes.
of the driveway and be able to drive myself again. And it's just little things like that, finding little things to say, okay, it's bad right now. I don't feel great, but I'm going to set this goal. And I know if I follow this goal and follow what I need to do, the steps, I can overcome this and I can
Yes.
do what I need to do for myself.
And at
And
that
I felt
moment, you focused on the positive. You said, "I'm gonna get
exactly.
over it, I'm gonna pass this," and that made a big difference.
Oh yeah, and I found, I think really why I was stuck in such a negative rut for a while was I can't tell you how many times in my early 20s, I didn't get support for going to college from my doctors and therapists. It's you need to go on disability. I know I can get paid. No, you need to go on disability. And when people hear that from the people who are supposed to support them over and over, after a while that clicks. You go, well, yeah, I guess I can't do it. I guess I got to get a lawyer. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to drive. Well, why am I bother trying? I'm just going to do what I
You
need
start
to
to
do.
believe it. When people keep
Yes.
telling you things over and over again, even though they're wrong, if it's like a recording in your ear over and over and over and over again, a lot of people are going to start to believe what they hear. They're like, well, they must be right. There's more than one person telling me this, but that's not true. You have to go with what's inside you. What does your inner instinct tell you? If you think you could do it, don't listen to the people around you. You could do it.
Exactly.
You could do it.
And even just writing down, one of the things a former mentor of mine told me that I found wonderful. He told me, get a whiteboard or even type something up on paper and make 3 personal goals and 3 professional goals. And just stick it somewhere where every day, if it's when you first wake up in the morning or you go into your office,
Yep.
you look, it's there, and you remind yourself of what you're capable of doing, what you can work for. And he said, and there's no shame in at some point changing it. Maybe you
Yeah.
couldn't get to that goal in the time you wanted. Take a step back, reassess the situation, change it, and then start
Yes.
working towards it again. And I
I
mean, it could be something as simple as, I'm going to reduce my depression by going for a walk 20 minutes every day. It doesn't have to
exactly.
be anything major. It could be
No.
something just as simple as that.
It's just as simple as that. And I talk about that when I talk about to people, I teach them about short-term goals and making long-term goals and just simple goals, just like you said, taking a walk for 20 minutes. It doesn't have to, you're not thinking about these gargantuan goals, you're being realistic with yourself, just little goals. And when you do it, you feel good about it,
Oh yeah.
that helps your self-esteem and your self-confidence, believe it or not. And the more that you apply these little goals and the more you do it, the better you feel as a person. And before you know it, your self-confidence builds up and you as a person starts to feel better, and that you'll see that the depression starts to decrease. Now, there was some questions that people had asked. One of the questions they asked us was, how does epilepsy affect depression? And people with epilepsy are more likely to develop depression and other mood disorders even before their first seizure. This suggests that the changes in the brain that make a person susceptible to seizures also make them more susceptible to depression than the general population. So what do you think about that?
Well, it's very true because of if you have something like head trauma or any malformation or anything in the brain, it causes the brain to act differently. It
Yes, it
changes
does.
the biochemical levels of your neurotransmitters. And one thing, I was talking to somebody recently about who his child has autism, but she's also had a history of having seizures, even though she wasn't officially diagnosed with epilepsy.
Right.
He was really frustrated with her behavior. And I said, well, think about it. Your daughter's taking anticonvulsants, which slows her central nervous system down. It
Mhm.
increases depression, increases being tired, but then she's also on SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And
Yes.
that's trying to make the brain activity increase. It's trying to push serotonin through to lower depression. And
Crazy.
I'm on a similar situation.
Yeah.
I'm on 3 anticonvulsants, 2 are for my seizures, 1 is for pain management,
Yeah.
but then I'm on a low dose of Zoloft for the same reason. And I
Right.
said to my friend, I said, the only way I could describe this is my brain, her brain, it's like a biochemical hot mess. You got part of your brain going, slow down, take it easy. You
Yeah.
got another part of your brain going, come on, let's go. We got to make this happen. We got to get better. And I think people just don't realize that's one of the main reasons these medications, they just suck the energy out of people. And
Yeah.
that's what causes a lot of these mood conditions, the anxiety and depression. And I found that I had to acknowledge, all right, I'm not getting off medicine. This is going to be a life journey. But
Yes.
I have to make sure I'm doing what I can to reduce or alleviate some of these side effects so
Yeah.
that, I have a good quality of life. That's why I go out in my garage every day. Once I take the kids to school, I work out, I come in and have a good breakfast. I go through my list of things I have to do. And where I used to stress myself out and be like, I have to get this all done, I go through and I'll pick 2 or 3 that I know are the most important. And
Yep.
that's my focus for the day. If I can do more, great. If I can't, I can't. And you just have to be able to find where your boundaries are and
Yes.
find your strengths and even weaknesses. There's no, I mean, I used to be the kind of person where I was so type A, failure wasn't an option, weakness wasn't an option. I burnt myself out emotionally, mentally being like that,
I
where
did too.
I had to say to myself, okay, if I can't do something, that doesn't make me a failure. I just have to go back to the situation and say, okay, right now, for some reason, I can't get this goal done. Do I need more time? Do I actually need help with it? What
Yeah.
kind of tools can I find? Can I research something, make it easier? So, I told it took a long time to get out of my mind.
Yeah.
Failure's not an option. It's okay, it's not failure.
Right.
I'm learning. At this point, I'm missing something, and what can I do to learn it so
Yes.
I can complete it? It's such a you have to take such a different look at it through a different set of eyes. That's what I
Yes.
really find, so that you can give yourself strength.
And I feel like, there's many times where I caused my own seizures because I was a type A also. I started a project, I had to get it done. I had to get it done. Sometimes I would spend 8 to 12 hours on the computer and I would drain myself so much that I would cause stress on my body and that would cause me to have a seizure. And then day my doctor looked at me and he said, "You don't have to give it up." He said, "But think about your priorities. Think about what's important
Yeah.
in life, do you want to be here for your grandkids? Do you want to have, do you want to see your children get married one day?" He says, do you want to have a fun, fulfilling life? Then you need to put limitations. And then for people suffering with depression, I think you have to change your lifestyle a little bit. You have to get to the root cause. Why am I depressed? Am I depressed because I'm having a lot of seizures? Okay, so maybe if I change my lifestyle a little, maybe I will cause myself less seizures. And when I changed my lifestyle and I gave myself limits, okay, I'm going to be on the computer till this time. I'm not going to do this much. If I don't get it done today, I'm not going to stay up and try to get it done. I got tomorrow. And whatever I don't get done,
Exactly.
I'll do the following day. So I put less stress on myself and my body, and my seizures started to decrease. I started to eat right. I started to change a lot of the foods I was eating. Believe it or not, a lot of the processed foods and a lot of the foods with high sodium can actually put so many toxins in your body that makes your body so sluggish and stressed that it could actually possibly cause a seizure. Now, and I'm
Oh,
saying it's gonna do
absolutely.
it, but it definitely can, and it's done it for me. And and even caffeine is good, but it's not too good for your body. If you drink too much, you could stimulate your brain so much that you could cause a seizure. So I'm not saying wipe out coffee, because I love coffee. You have to have your limitations. And exercise is so important. And I tell people that might not be in the greatest shape, you only need 15 minutes of exercise and you could just do stretches, but that exercise gets out the stress. It moves your bloodstream, it moves the circulation in your body, which helps your body function better, which can play a big role in your decreasing of seizures and also your clarity and your focus on how you
Oh,
do
yeah.
things. And when I finally became controlled after so many years, I started to feel my brain start to heal. And I was suffering a lot from memory loss. I had a terrible short-term memory. And when I became control finally, my memory started to improve. I noticed a big difference because my husband would get upset with me. He would tell me something, and then 10 minutes later, whatever he told me, he asked me to do,
It's like it never happened.
and like it never happened. And by doing all these things, I kind of helped myself, and it helped me. I'm not going to say, like, there are times when I would get depressed and I would think about things, but then I have to change my retrain my brain to think differently and to really examine what's causing my depression. Is it related to my epilepsy, and what can I do about it? And then, one question we also got was, how do you deal with depression and epilepsy? And one of the things that was mentioned was speak to your epilepsy treatment team to ask them about where you can find support. Now, we talked about this. Support groups are available in person or online. And in addition, many people with mental health disorders like depression or anxiety find that more active lifestyle and eating healthy can help. So that's an actual fact that was given by one of the organizations. And that's something we just talked about. And it worked for us. And it's actually stated on the internet, that it does work. So that's something people could actually think about, is what are they eating? What's their lifestyle? Are they exercising? And because you could you could fall into that pity party and say, poor me, poor me, poor me, but you're not going to get better unless you reach out, get help, And I think, I think it's great because I went on a Zoom call with a lot of people that had a similar problem that I did. And it was so refreshing to know that you're not alone. And even people said thank you to me at the end because they're like, you know what? I realize I'm not alone, that, there are more people just like me that are thinking exactly and feeling exactly the way I do. And it's refreshing and you learn from each other.
And that really is the truth, because I think that was one of the biggest challenges I had as a young child and teenager was I didn't really know anyone with epilepsy. I had one friend who had seizures and she outgrew them. She had absent seizures when she was younger. But, I was the only one I knew of who went to status, who had to be on heavy medication, who had to go through all these things. And it was such a lonely feeling because I thought, who really understands what I go through every day?
Yeah.
And I felt like I had no level of compassion from any of the neurologists I was with. Like they couldn't get it. And I've even had
Yeah.
times when I've been in the hospital and they had the fellows come around talk to you. I got frustrated one day with one of them and she's just like, well, I don't know what you mean. I said, well, I understand you don't know what you mean. I mean, because you can't feel it. I
Yeah.
said, I understand you know the research, your book's about it and everything. I go, but you can't feel what I'm feeling. That's why it's important for, I would get so frustrated with time with doctors and be like, we got to communicate. I
Yes.
understand you're on a time schedule, but how are you going to help me if I can't tell you how I feel? And
Yes.
that's why I found, once I started meeting people who had epilepsy as well and getting involved in support groups and everything, it was a mixed feeling. There were some people, it was so refreshing to talk to them. And then, like you said, there are some people who were so depressed or so angry. I had empathy for them because you could tell they just couldn't get out of their own way. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I just couldn't be around them, not because I didn't care about them or want to help them. I realized until they were ready to help themselves, there
Yes.
was nothing I could do for them.
I had the same problem, because when you're around people who are very negative, who, think that nothing's ever going to get better and all they can think about and talk about is negative, 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 it can be draining, and it's very hard to even give advice to that person because they don't want to hear it because they think the worst of the worst all the time. So no matter what you
Absolutely.
say to them, it's not going to make a difference. And they end up sucking the energy out of you. They end up pulling you into their hole of depression. And when you start feeling that drain feeling after you talk to somebody like that, you know that it's time to take a step back. And not because you don't like the person, because the person is actually pulling you down. And with epilepsy, the last thing you need is someone pulling you down because you need to be pumped up. The only way to
Yes.
get better is to feel the empowerment inside you and to feel good about yourself and to love yourself and accept yourself and to have high self-esteem. And you can get all those things. And we show you how, both Natalie and I, and getting and staying away from negative people will help you. That's the big one. Staying away from negative people. Stay around positive people that will give you positive reinforcement, and be around people that can understand you. Your family might understand, they love you, but they might understand what you're going through. Your doctor might not understand what you're going through. Reach out and find people who understand what you're going through. That way, when you talk to them, you're like, they get the gist of it. They understand, and they can give you their advice. And it might not be the advice you always want to hear, but it's sometimes the things we don't want to hear is actually good for us too, and sometimes, the best advice is listening to other people. And I always say that you learn a lot from other people, especially when people are walking through the same pathway, and especially if they're a few steps ahead of you. It's good to converse and get different perspectives because you learn from each other.
Oh, absolutely. And when it comes to being around the right people, I think one of the hard things I had, because there were a lot of people in my family who were very toxic about me having epilepsy. And for a long time, I just kept thinking, well, they're family. I have to be around them. I have to support them. I can't do this or that. I finally had to tell myself, it's okay to have a long distance relationship. It's
Yes.
okay to, just send a text and say, thinking of you, I hope you're well, and
Yes.
rather than seeing them weekly, maybe once a month or every other month. my family's, home in New York and I'm here in California, but going on Zoom and talking to them, even if it's for 30 minutes, you can make that effort, but knowing that there's that tension there, say, I love you, but I have to love you from a distance as I deal with these things. I mean,
Yes.
there's nothing wrong. So many people think I can't cut certain people out of my life. I can't do certain things. If that's what's going to help you to become healthier and stronger, there's nothing wrong with saying I love you, but I have to let go. I
Yes.
just can't continue on this pattern. I can't continue down this path. And that even includes in healthcare. If you have a doctor who you feel
Yes.
just cannot get past you having, oh, you can't do this, or the one, I had a former doctor and annoyed me when he didn't like if I questioned anything. And the moment I did, it was, oh, this is all in your head. And
Yeah.
one day I really wanted to look at him and go, really? It's in my head? All these years I thought it was in my foot. Well, at least we know where it is. We're making progress, aren't we? I just wanted to be so sarcastic right back
Yeah.
at him. I wanted to let him have it. But I realized, he wasn't a bad person, but I think what it was is a lot of his patients were there with conditions like Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And I think he just didn't want to say to me, I don't take care of a lot of adults with epilepsy. Maybe we should find an epileptologist just to help. I think he didn't want to say to me he didn't know something.
And that's his own ego.
Exactly.
That's not something that you did. That was his own ego. But you know what? I've been to doctors where they were Googling while I was talking to them.
Oh my
And
goodness.
then I was like, you know, I kind of looked over and I could see the neurologist typing away. And I'm like, she shouldn't be typing. Like you said, she was more a specialist in one area. And they are very
Yeah.
good. They do have a lot of good neurologists that can deal with epilepsy. But where I am, there's a lot of clinics for epilepsy and there are a lot of epileptologists. So I like to go to an epileptologist, and I found a fabulous epileptologist that just does epilepsy, 24/7 epilepsy. So I feel very comfortable. And, and my doctor is very positive. My doctor always reinforced me, always was positive, never tried to pull me down. And I used to even come in with questions and, things that I heard. I'm like, is this true? No, that's a myth. Is this true? Yes, that is true. And then he would go into detail about it. But he
Oh,
was
nice.
always, he always took anything I said seriously. And it could be the silliest thing. He didn't care. He listened, he understood, and he gave me an answer, and there was no judgment on neither part. And it's very important for someone to have good communication, because you have to be able, if you're suffering from depression, you have to be able to tell your epileptologist or neurologist, hey, I'm feeling depressed. And because you don't know if it's from the medication, a symptom from the medication, or if you're actually depressed. Because if it's from the medication, they might have to wean you off that medication and put you on a
Oh,
different
yeah.
medication. So communication is key. And I think that's one thing we have to remember. And one thing I want to talk about before we go is that someone had mentioned, is epilepsy a mental illness? And epilepsy is not a mental illness. In fact, the vast majority of people living with epilepsy have no cognitive or psychological problem. For the most part, psychological issues in epilepsy are limited to people with severe and uncontrolled epilepsy. And people have to realize that it's a neurological disorder, and that it's not a disease, it's a disorder. And
Mhm.
it has nothing to do with having any type of mental disease or disorder. It's totally different. How do you
No,
feel about
it
that?
it is, and a lot of it has to do with, I think some people don't understand the complexity that epilepsy can bring to someone's life, because, when people research conditions, they're almost looking like, okay, this is what it is, diagnosis, sign, symptom, and it's supposed to be simple, like they want it all laid out. Well, with
Yeah.
epilepsy, it could depend what part of the brain is infected. Was this due to a
Yes.
genetic mutation, a head injury, post-stroke complications, or not even being able to even find out what has caused it? And,
Yes.
that's why, I find what makes me truly want to be an advocate for this community, because I think a lot of people, due to fear of the unknown and not understanding it, really don't know how to empathize or take the time to see what challenges someone with epilepsy can truly be facing to
Yes,
help them find a solution to those challenges. And I feel
yes,
as a community, we really need to now work hard to come together. I know there's been a lot of stigma in our community, there's a lot of pain in our community, but I feel we can all come together
we
and take
can.
that pain and we can turn it into strength by helping one another and just letting each other know we're not alone in this.
No,
Epilepsy can be a very isolating condition. It can create a
yes.
lot of loneliness, but at the end of the day, none of us are really alone.
Exactly. You know, a lot, like we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of people that can't work because of it. They might not be able to work, but now, you know, with so many jobs being, you know, they could do it from home. You know, there are options. You know, there's more options for people with epilepsy now, and some people get, like I did, very depressed that I couldn't drive, and you know, all these things could lead to depression. A lot of things in with epilepsy could lead to depression. Just having seizures. You know, there was one, you know, there was one question I remember getting, I don't know, I have it in front of me, but they said, how long does the feeling of depression last after you've had a seizure? Because remember I was saying I would feel depressed after I had a seizure.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you're like, oh, I'm 3 weeks seizure free, and then all of a sudden a seizure comes, and then you feel like you're going back to square one again. You know, you're
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
count those days, and that could be very depressive. And you know, they say a lot of times when people get a seizure, it can last from 12 to 24 hours, the feeling of depression that they had the seizure. You know, so it's normal to feel depression. It's just you have to realize when depression has started to become a control over your life, and you're waking up every day sad, and you can't function, and you can't see the bright sunlight in the morning, and all you can see is the darkness. That's when you have to reach out, and you have to get help, and you have to start talking to people, and you have to start looking at changing your lifestyle, changing the way you think, and changing the things you do, because you don't want to get to the point where like Natalie was talking about, where she felt like she wanted to commit suicide. So many people have committed suicide, and that's something no family member, you know, wants to see their loved one, you know, get to that point, and we don't want to lose you, you know.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's always good to talk to somebody. And even if you have a psychologist or a therapist to talk to, and you can share these emotions and they're in confidentiality, you know, it is always good to talk to somebody and, you know, learn ways to avoid things like that.
And there are nonprofits, you know, you have to do a search, but when I had a real serious trauma, it wasn't related to my epilepsy years ago. I sought help, and for a while, I was actually able to give free counseling. And a lot of organizations, a lot of companies will offer what's called employee assistance programs, which, if you're not doing well, short term, they can give you so many free sessions while they help you find a psychologist that may be on your insurance plan so that you can, you know, set some goals and see where you need to be and take it from there. I mean, if you're in touch and know of free resources, or your employer can help you find some resources, don't feel any shame in going to HR and saying, you know, I'm having a rough time right now. I want to be able to stay focused on my job. You know, can I get a few free sessions through the program? Can I get the EAP number? And,
Mhm.
you know, let them know what's, you know, you don't have to go into your personal life, what's going on, but
Right.
just let them know, you know, I'm having a little bit of a rough patch right now and I want to stay focused on the job. Is there any way I can call and just have a time to, maybe if I just talk to somebody in a session or two, I can get past this? I mean, those are what those resources are for. So take
Yes.
full advantage of them if they're available to you. If you know of organizations that can help you, don't be afraid or ashamed to pick up the phone and talk. And if things get real bad, like I said at the beginning about the 988 number, that's there for a reason. There's no shame in calling and saying, you know, I'm overwhelmed right now. Can I just vent, please? And, you
Yes.
know, and getting that message across. That's why those volunteers are there, so that you're not holding it inside and then doing something to harm yourself.
Exactly. And nowadays, the healthcare system, if you have healthcare, the healthcare systems are partying up with a third party. They're partying up with therapists and coaches, And if you are suffering from depression, or if you are suffering from suicidal thoughts, you could call your healthcare provider and you can tell them that you need to speak with somebody. And a lot of times they will give you X amount of sessions for free, and you don't have to pay for it. Your healthcare will pay the cost for it, and you receive the coaching sessions and the therapy sessions to help you with your depression.
And if you go to our YouTube channel for the Defeating Epilepsy Foundation, we have a section for mental health wellness awareness, and we have videos on PTSD, anxiety, and depression, other sources. And please go ahead and watch them, or you can go to our blog and our website at www.defeatingepilepsy.org, and please read them. I found the first step I took in healing and really being able to acknowledge that this was going to be a life journey, I sat down and made the effort to educate myself about epilepsy, educate myself about the symptoms I had, because I finally just had enough of saying, you know what, I don't really understand what I'm going through. I can't really get the answers I need from a doctor. Well, I realized the only way I was going to advocate for myself was through education.
Yeah.
So please go ahead and, those resources are available on our site and YouTube channel for that exact reason. And you're always welcome to email me at info@defeatingepilepsy.org if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to talk on the phone or talk through email, whatever you're more comfortable with. And the blessing I've had in the couple of years since we launched is I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and just sometimes they just needed to vent. They needed to talk to somebody who they knew had it as well, and they could just say, you know what, I'm not talking to a doctor who knows it through a book, or I'm not talking through a therapist who's trying to explain it. I'm talking to someone who lives with it every day like me. And that's my job. That's what I'm here for as an advocate. So please don't hesitate to reach out if it's something just as simple as that.
And I have a website called the epilepsycarecoach.com, and I give out free consultations. And you could also reach me on my YouTube channel. I have natural healing tips, and you could even type in my name if you have a hard time finding it, and my videos will pop up. And even with this video, if you leave questions for both me and Natalie in the comment box, we will do our best to answer any questions. If you have questions about, how to cope with depression, organizations that you want to learn more about, anything that comes to mind, don't be embarrassed. We're here to help you. Any questions that you might have of how we could help people with depression, and any resources or ideas that we have, we'll be happy to provide you with any answers to any comments or questions in the comment box.
Absolutely.
So, once again, I'd like to thank everybody for listening to this video and this podcast. And, thank you so much for taking the time out. I hope that we helped you, and I hope that we, can help you more in the future. And if you have any questions about epilepsy and you'd like us to do a video about it, shoot us a text, shoot us an email, shoot us a comment in the comment box, and we will be happy to create a video with your questions and answer your questions the best we can. Is there anything else that you'd like to input before we go?
No, I think we gave a lot of great information today, but I also want to say the same thing. Don't, please leave us a comment in the section below. Reach out to us. Both Stacey and I are here to support everyone, and we just want to do what we can to make a difference for all you and bring a positive vibe to our community.
And thank you once again for listening, and we'll see you soon. We do a video every week and a podcast every week. So we look forward to seeing you guys, and we hope that you guys will follow us and subscribe to our channels and, learn a lot from what the different topics that we're about to cover in the near future. So have a great day, everybody.
Have a good one.